Welcome to Task and Tune, where we dive deep into the world's most important stories, giving you a complete audio experience while you work, drive, or even just relax. This channel is designed specifically for multitaskers like you. Whether you're doing household chores, commuting to work, or getting some exercise in, we've got you covered. Today, we're talking about two of the most dramatic economic events in modern history: the Great Depression of 1929 and the 2008 global financial crisis. These crises shook the foundations of the global economy, leaving millions unemployed and rewriting the rules of finance. But did you know these two events have a lot in common? Despite happening decades apart, both were caused by unchecked speculation, risky investments, and a fragile financial system. Get ready to learn how these catastrophic events unfolded, how they reshaped global markets, and what lessons we can take from them to prevent future disasters. So, keep doing what you're doing, whether it's working, driving, or relaxing, and let's jump right into the heart of the global financial crises. Setting the stage: the Roaring Twenties and the 1929 stock market boom. Let's begin with the Roaring Twenties. The U.S. economy was booming after World War I. People were investing in the stock market like never before. With new technologies like automobiles and radios, the American dream felt within reach for millions. Stock prices skyrocketed, and many believed they had discovered the secret to infinite wealth. But beneath this golden age of prosperity lay a dangerous assumption: that stock prices would always go up. Banks were giving out loans with minimal oversight, and people were buying stocks on margin, borrowing money to invest more than they could afford. It was a ticking time bomb. The Great Crash of 1929, the day the party stopped. Then came October 24, 1929, Black Thursday. Panic hit Wall Street. Stock prices began to fall, and investors rushed to sell. The more they sold, the more prices dropped. By the end of October, the stock market had lost nearly 30% of its value. But the worst was yet to come. The financial markets, built on confidence and speculation, unraveled. Banks, which had invested heavily in the market, were on the verge of collapse. Thousands of banks failed, and people lost their life savings overnight. The crash didn't just hit Wall Street. It wiped out businesses, led to mass unemployment, and spiraled into the Great Depression. The Great Depression: economic collapse and global impact. The U.S. economy shrank by a third. Unemployment skyrocketed from 3% to nearly 25%. Bread lines and soup kitchens became a common sight across America. But this was more than an American crisis. It spread across the globe. In Europe, which was already struggling to recover from World War I, the Depression exacerbated existing problems. Countries like Germany, crippled by war reparations, were hit hardest, leading to hyperinflation and political unrest. The global economy was in free fall. But how did the world recover from this catastrophe? Enter Franklin D. Roosevelt and his groundbreaking policies, known as the New Deal. FDR's government programs created jobs, regulated banks, and injected new life into the economy. The reforms, like the establishment of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and the introduction of Social Security, laid the foundation for the modern welfare state. Enter the 2008 financial crisis, the housing bubble. Fast forward to the early 2000s. Much like the 1920s, America was experiencing an era of prosperity, driven largely by the booming housing market. Home ownership was at an all-time high, and mortgages were cheap and easy to get, even for people who couldn't afford them. But there was a problem. These subprime mortgages, loans given to borrowers with low credit scores, were bundled together and sold as mortgage-backed securities. Banks and investors treated these securities as safe investments, even though they were filled with risky loans. As home prices rose, investors made a fortune. But by 2007, the housing bubble burst. People couldn't keep up with their mortgage payments, and home prices began to plummet. Banks were left holding billions of dollars in worthless loans, and this set the stage for the 2008 financial crisis. The Lehman Brothers collapse. The catalyst for a global meltdown. In September 2008, one of the oldest and most prestigious banks in America, Lehman Brothers, declared bankruptcy. With $600 billion in assets, its collapse sent shockwaves across the global financial system. Credit markets froze, and banks around the world were on the verge of collapse. Lehman's fall exposed the massive risks banks had taken on, leading to a global credit crunch. Governments scrambled to contain the damage. The U.S. government stepped in with bailouts, injecting hundreds of billions of dollars into major banks to prevent a complete collapse of the financial system. The aftermath and global recession. The financial crisis triggered the Great Recession, the most severe economic downturn since the Great Depression. Unemployment soared to 10% in the U.S., and millions of people lost their homes due to foreclosure. Global trade contracted, and countries around the world slipped into recession. Governments implemented stimulus packages, central banks slashed interest rates, and the U.S. Federal Reserve engaged in quantitative easing, pumping money into the economy to revive growth. But the recovery was slow, and the long-term effects of the crisis still linger today. Comparing the Great Depression and 2008 financial crisis. Both the Great Depression and the 2008 financial crisis were marked by extreme speculation, lack of regulation, and excessive borrowing. In both cases, banks played a pivotal role in the collapse. But there were differences, too. While the Great Depression took a decade to recover from, the global response to the 2008 crisis was faster and more coordinated. Governments learned from the mistakes of the past, implementing bailouts and stimulus packages to prevent another decade-long depression. What lessons have we learned? So what can we learn from these crises? First, over-leveraging, whether in the stock market or in housing, can lead to catastrophic consequences. Second, regulation matters. The lack of oversight allowed both the speculative bubble of 1929 and the subprime mortgage crisis of 2008 to spiral out of control. And third, global financial systems are interconnected. What starts as a crisis in one country can quickly spread across the globe, impacting markets everywhere. The policies and safeguards put in place after these crises have undoubtedly made the system more resilient, but new risks continue to emerge. The next crisis. So, with all we've learned, the question remains: are we prepared for the next financial crisis? History shows us that bubbles will continue to form, and when they pop, the consequences can be dire. But as long as we remember the lessons from the past, we can hope to mitigate the damage and prevent another global meltdown. If you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to subscribe to Task and Tune and listen while you work, commute, or relax. Our goal is to make complex stories like this engaging and easy to understand.